go ahead and start the March Energy Advisory Committee meeting. Pull up the agenda, and I guess first would be review of the minutes. We don't have those, we'll defer those till next month.
Thank you.
Next would be public speak. Do we have any public that would like to speak? Seeing none, hearing none. Move on to the next agenda item. Once I open it up. Too many files. Okay, discussion of PACE program.
Okay.
So I know Mary, you sent in a lot of materials in reference to the PACE program.
Yep, and I can sort of give an update. I've talked to a couple different folks since initiating this process as well. I think also I'll just sort of as a context comment to say is that I don't believe, from my understanding in terms of conflict of interest, there is no component of conflict between the work I do at HCG and my presentation in terms of the PACE program, because there's no crossover with the city in terms of the work I'm doing there.
Okay.
One of the things that we're looking at doing at HCG is sort of supporting towns that need the tax sort of software and know-how to be able to roll out the PACE program. Energy? Ordinance upstairs.
Upstairs and in the hall.
Oh, okay.
All the way at the end that overlooks the intersection.
So based on this fact that the city does not need any assistance with that and that they have full understanding of how to be able to roll this program out, there is no conflict of interest.
Okay. Okay.
So just wanted to start there with that clarification. So basically I've talked with both the mayor about this program a bit. She knew some about it already, had actually reached out to Mass Development, and unfortunately their Springfield office is not most helpful. And so the only time that I actually got help was by actually just saying, I'm calling Boston. And from there I was able to reach the director of the program and had a good conversation with her. The materials that I'd sent out in advance of this meeting, including this presentation piece of it, all comes from her. And I think in my conversation with the mayor is that we can go through these, but I think the frame of reference is that she would be interested in a letter of recommendation, if we so choose, coming from the Energy Committee.
Okay.
And that then it would go into a subcommittee, if approved by the City Council, into a subcommittee of the City Council to review. And Thomas Peak is on that subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
We've already had conversations as well, and he's interested in PACE and is supportive of it. So I think that would be the process. Is if we feel so moved, we would write a letter of recommendation. It would then go from the mayor into the City Council. They would reflect upon it and then decide whether or not the city made sense to move forward on it. So that's the sort of context of this. If we want to then walk through this and see if there's any questions, we can do that. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at all this before.
I have not, unfortunately.
Okay. So basically, in a gist, it rolled out in 2011. A number of towns did sign on, but then the financing was recognized that it was not really, they had to redo aspects of the financing components of the program within the state, and that was handed over to Mass Development to do that, and they are now preparing to roll it out later this year. And in here, I guess, well, at the very end of actually this is where it talks about towns that have already approved it and already going forward. So on page 11, you can see a list of towns across the state that are already involved, already sort of ready to go. And so the question then is, we could get on that as a sort of pre-authorized town by the time it rolls out, depending on our city's process, or after the fact, depending on what we wanted to do or how we processed it.
It's actually surprising, a few in Western Mass, more than I would expect.
Yeah. Yep. North Adams,
Agawam, Greenfield, North
Yep.
Adams, Northampton,
West Springfield.
Pittsfield, West Springfield.
Yeah. So there was a number of towns out here, so it seems like we'll be right in there, with some of the larger cities and towns in our community.
I guess the one thing that I'd seen in that article was actually just when I get a weekly energy-related articles, this popped up about PACE program. I thought it was interesting, so I forwarded it to you guys. And I saw the summary basically was that some areas are getting sued, or there were some lawsuits involved about just that some homeowners were surprised by what happened to their property tax bills when they signed up for the PACE program. It seemed like it was just a lack of communication on upfront of what that program actually does and how it affects your tax bills and stuff. And
Yep.
they weren't expecting higher tax bills, I guess. I don't know how, from the article the way it's worded, I can understand, but it seems like this might be one key component is communication, especially keeping in mind with the school and the expected a large increase in their property taxes. If somebody did this PACE program on top of the school increase, they could be in for a very high tax bill. So I think that's something the city probably should keep in mind. Just being very upfront and very clear on what this implicates on their property tax bills going forward.
Right. Well, and I think that's, to me, again, like you said, that's a perfect example of just a lack of understanding of,
Yeah.
You're getting work done, you've got to pay a loan. Instead of paying a loan, you're paying it on your property tax
Yeah,
bill.
I guarantee people won't notice if their electricity bill goes down $100 as much as they notice their property tax bill goes up $100.
I think part of the article too, though, talked a little bit about one that HUD was backing away from allowing PACE
On federal
on
bills or
HUD,
something.
on HUD-related
On HUD-related
mortgages and
credit.
HUD-related loans.
Oh yeah, it was FHA stuff. Yeah. On the,
I think because of some of the semi-predatory practices of some of the lenders that
yeah.
Right.
by potentially having this look like a city-endorsed program, when in
Yeah.
fact it isn't, and that in fact a project might be city-endorsed when the city isn't endorsing the project. The decision as to whether or not to move forward with a specific project by a homeowner is strictly between the entity and the homeowner, and
Yeah.
that by putting it under the umbrella of the city, perhaps it might give more credibility to something that may or may not be financially viable.
Yeah, it reminds me of the solar programs when they were first rolling out and they were doing those zero cost down
Right.
PPAs, and people didn't realize that the cost of electricity will actually increase over time if they read the fine print of the contract,
Yep.
which could eventually be more expensive than if they just stayed on regular electricity.
Because the hope was that the electricity, well, not the hope, but the plan was that the electricity bills are going to go up.
Yeah.
So that's where it makes sense. But yeah, if they don't go up.
And there was, slick salesmen. I mean, I
Right.
had a couple of them even come to my house when I was looking for solar panels, and they're always going to be that. As far as this program, so if we were sign up as a town, does the town approve which contractors and people can actually sell it? So it'd have to be like vetted by the town and say, here's an approved list of people. Similar like the Mass Save program, here's an approved list of contractors that can do Mass Save stuff.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Because that might be a way to
it's-
help, at least for our town residents, of preventing some of those predatory practices. If we know this company has a good reputation, they get on the green list, this one gets on the green list,
And there's a flip side of that, because then at that point you're
It becomes
endorsing.
city endorsed, yeah.
Right.
So I took a look at Northampton's website today, for instance, and they specifically note in Northampton that due to federal issues, they have their PACE program has been scaled back to cover only commercial and
Right.
multifamily, I think, or
Multifamily, commercial, and
Yeah.
industrial.
So they're backed out of the residential piece of the marketplace. I suspect for the same reason that the
Right.
some of the federal funding agencies that are most used by single family residents are getting a little bit leery about the program. And maybe I don't know enough about mass development's role in this. Maybe in fact that helps clean a lot of those issues up, because obviously mass development is a very
Yeah, because I think those articles were
well
referring to-
qualified organization,
Yeah.
and certainly is well positioned to be able to craft something that maybe mitigates some of those concerns. I don't really know what mass development has been tasked to do.
Well, so if you look at slide 7, it's exactly what you just listed off, the eligible
Right.
properties within Massachusetts. I think so Massachusetts in general is not going with the single family home.
Okay.
So the property types, commercial, industrial, nonprofits, and multifamilies. So I don't see them even listing single family homes.
I feel much more comfortable with that, because I know
Yeah.
the property tax hit, commercial buildings are gonna understand the property taxes much more than residents.
Yeah.
Right. That said, I suspect they're probably already able to tap into some more sophisticated financing strategies than
Yes and no. I mean, I think that's the whole point of this program, is that it's seeking to help those business owners that want to see the 20-year vision, but still also recognize that they may not be able to do that in quite the same time frame, and so they're able to use this kind of a program that ties it into their property and changes some of those dynamics, as opposed to it just being on their business.
well, it's in the equity that the business owns, presumably.
Yeah.
Which I could
Yeah.
assume, like restaurants on Cottage Street or Union Street, that they have no idea if they're gonna be here for 20 years, but that spot on Cottage Street
Right.
will be there for 20 years and may turn over a couple of times to different restaurants, etc.
Yep. So slide 6, I mean, we're sort of jumping around this, but slide 6 is that Mass Development will act as the lead program administrator. They will administer the PACE Massachusetts program in consultation with DOER. The commercial property assessed clean energy PACE was passed, was renewed, sort of, and passed by Governor Baker in August 2016. So that's where that's sort of all of the sort of different components. It's already working in Connecticut. It's gone through a couple phases down in Connecticut, and they actually developed a Connecticut Green Bank down there. Rhode Island enabled it in 2016. Massachusetts enabled it in 2016. So Connecticut is by far the sort of, in the New England region, the furthest along with this. But I think there again, they're very much. At least my understanding of the Massachusetts program is that the Connecticut program is that it is very much just commercial focused. I don't know if they do multifamily or not, but I know that's why it's CPACE in Connecticut, because it's really just commercially focused. And I know, going back to that article again that you had sent around, it was definitely residential in California was the problems that they were raising in that. So again, that's Mass Development's roles. We can see the eligible properties, again, being industrial, commercial, industrial, nonprofit, and multifamily. The measure types are energy efficiency, renewable energy, and green gas line extensions.
That's interesting.
Which would be interesting. I don't know how that would fit with the moratorium in
Right
our
now it's
area.
nothing, but as soon as the moratorium gets lifted, which it's projected in 2 years from what I've seen.
Yeah.
I guess playing the devil's advocate, I wonder what is the benefit of moving ahead with something, or starting the process to move ahead before the program really gets established? At least the program under Mass Development is the lead program administrator, until they become that, until the roles and everything else gets better understood. Is there anything?
Is it like a limited set of funds, or is it?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that ordinance is upstairs.
Where?
They should be in the conference room in this back next to the mayor's office.
Behind the,
Yep,
All the way at
behind.
the end of this hallway on the
If you
next
go
one?
up the stairs and go all the way to the end,
The room that overlooks
oh,
the
the first
pond?
floor, the second?
first
First
floor.
floor.
First floor.
Fourth floor of the room that
There's a
overlooks the
stairwell just
Right there.
right behind you too.
I'm not gonna, thank you.
You're welcome. So in terms of the difference between going forward now versus waiting till it rolls out, I mean, I don't know the benefits or the limitations of that. I think that because it's already gone through multiple stages, I don't think that it's not like Northampton, who signed on in 2011, had the program entirely falter for now 8 years, and they did nothing with the fact that they had an ordinance in it. Where it is rolling out in 2019, so I think us moving forward as a city and enacting this now makes sense.
I would just say, you know, in order to be well enough informed to make a recommendation, I don't know if the information exists right now in order to inform ourselves. You know, presumably the reason that the governor signed this new law in 2016 was there must have been something lacking in the initial program that was established back in 2011.
And that was the financing
So-
part.
so-
So the financing components of how that was going to be rolled out, and did they leave it up to individual banks to just figure out their own financing components, or was there going to be an administrator, a lead administrator overseeing that? And that's what was not rolled out at the beginning, and that's why the program sort of faltered. And then the re-rollout is Mass Development taking on that lead administrator role, working with finance banks. They're already in communication with multiple banks, and trying to move that piece forward. I think that's what they're finalizing now for the rollout of the program.
I mean, I think the goal of the program was encouraging energy efficiency and renewable energy is right up the alley of what just our charter recommendations are for. So as far as that, like the end goal of it, and I would assume, you know, we could put in there, you know, this is in line with the goals of the Energy Advisory Committee in our charter, and we think this would be worthwhile, but it should have some due diligence. But, you know, putting caveats saying that the city council should do its due diligence as far as communication of the program and et cetera. And
But I don't know what this is yet. Yes, we will all, you know, the concept, I think we're all supportive of, but the implementation of that concept
but I think
in
when
Massachusetts doesn't sound like it's been fully established yet.
What are you thinking? What are you looking for? What are you thinking is missing that's not already established? I mean,
Information. You know, it's, yes, I think there's a concept that I'm 100% behind. But the devil always comes down to the details of understanding, okay, where might there be weaknesses, you know, just to better understand that before endorsing a specific program that I don't know much of anything about yet.
you just basically, once it goes into effect and they have some actual loans given out, what happens with those?
Or rules and
turnovers.
regulations and procedures and policies and all the things that Mass Development, I think, is being tasked to develop as the program administrator.
I mean, I think that
But
one of
like
the
that,
pieces.
if you look at the last slide, they have that structure set up.
Well, but the presentation says will act, and it doesn't, they don't, I'm not certain that they have released anything that says if you're a community that wants to sign up for a program, this is the way to do it. These are the things that that you're committing to. These are, you know, the questions of does a community endorse or don't. I suspect we don't, but I suspect those questions would be answered explicitly in what they're developing right now.
So I'm trying.
But they have been doing it for years before this. The law was just a,
Yeah, I'm not certain anyone's done it very successfully, though. And I think
Yeah.
it's just-
Yeah, I don't know if there's been any actual PACE
Right.
projects that have gone through with separate funding outside of what they're working on now. I think that one of the pieces, so one of the more details that they were working out, and this is what I mentioned before too, is that, so I did have the conversation with the mayor about how it actually rolls out, right? So this slide talking about, you know, existing mortgage holders have to have written consent for PACE. Municipal liens are senior to PACE liens, but then unpaid PACE assessments are senior to all other mortgage liens in
which is
any
why
kind of
the
foreclosure.
mortgage holder needs to approve it.
Yep. PACE assessments can't be accelerated. Property sales, the PACE assessment stays with the property and transfers to the new owner. And so one of the components of this, and the component that the city holds then, is that is put through their muni tax software that they use as a betterment tax. We already have that. We've already used that within the city. So we already have both of those components in terms of how we would roll it out. The only thing that the mayor wasn't sure about, and I think again this is a question of the city council doing that due diligence piece, is that the one thing that she wasn't sure about, and again it's probably very simple within the software, but she doesn't know of a place where we've just added a betterment to one property, right? As opposed to saying everybody gets a stormwater, betterment component added to their tax bill. That's clearly within the software ability, but to do just a single person betterment clause and increase in their tax bill, that's something that still has to be looked into. But again, those are the details that Mass Development did work through and has been working with the state to make sure that they have in place for this to roll out. I'm not sure what else other than, which banks are going to be lenders through the PACE program and be willing to do that, and how, what rates they're going to be offering, or which installers would have access to be able to utilize PACE. I'm not sure what else they're going to roll out that would answer any additional questions that you seem to have.
But they haven't rolled anything out yet. So what I'm saying is, what is the harm to waiting? Because certainly the rollout you mentioned a half dozen questions, will help to answer those questions. What is the harm to wait until those answers are better known?
I guess maybe that I could come back to what our charter is, and according to our charter, advise and assist the city, its agencies and agents in developing priorities and programs focused on cost-effective energy use, energy conservation, and renewable energy generation. You may review and make energy-related recommendations about policies, procedures, activities, and facilities under the control of any city department, and may provide information, guidance, and assistance to any city agency in matters relating to energy conservation and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So if we go just by that charter, as far as the financing part and all that stuff, maybe our focus should just be, this project seems worthwhile, it matches the goals of our committee and what we're chartered to, and we leave all the financing part, and that, maybe it's overstepping our charter as far as seeing more history being on the financial aspect of all of it and how that gets applied, and that's more of a city council.
Well,
Subcommittee
quite honestly, I suspect that there's more expertise sitting in this room to help vet some of those questions than on the council. So I think we could be a benefit to the council by providing.
And maybe it's offering
advice.
that to be a part of that subcommittee as they delve deeper into it. Maybe our recommendation is that we recommend that it starts going through the subcommittee process and digging more into it, and then maybe the city council will have more weight into getting, PACE to present or developers to present and stuff like that instead of just our committee.
Do we know at this point what we would be recommending that the city actually do other than this concept?
I think
Yes,
that-
they
Become a PACE community. What
Yeah,
does that mean?
so there's
What are the
a-
steps that have to be taken?
Yep, there's and I think I included this when I sent to you. There's a template of an ordinance that would be passed,
Yep.
and that's it. And so they would have that they have that template, and they have what's been passed two different times through Northampton to review those, as to then be able to draft the city ordinance that I'm sure then the subcommittee would then bring back, if they recommended it, would bring back to the full city council to vote on. So yeah, I think that while I didn't want to request somebody coming out from Boston to come for the energy committee, I think it would be a recommendation that they would request her to come out and do a presentation to either the finance the subcommittee in the city council or the full city council meeting. And at one point in there, have somebody from Mass Development come out and be able to answer any other additional questions that you might have or they might have.
I guess I'd still like to think that this committee would be in a position to advise the council subcommittee, and that they can do anything that they want. That's what they're elected for. But for us to be in a position of knowledge, to be able to help advise them through the process, where there might be pluses, where there might be minuses. And I, certainly, again, the concept is great.
Yeah.
The implementation of the concept, I don't think that we have any particular expertise in at this point, or what the or implications of what adopting this really means for the city and means for people that might sign up for the program. Because I think if we endorse it, we say we think this is the good thing. We are coming from an area of expertise that many people in the city don't have, and to be able to be
Yeah, because worst case scenario, say those predatory practices could happen. Say they happen here. Not that they would, but if they could, then you'd have all these extra easements on properties. Taxes would be so high, nobody would want to buy buildings that a company, business foreclosed on, so they wouldn't want to pick it up and start, and then our property would become so expensive, our downtown would have trouble filling spots and businesses in downtown.
what's the process by which there's some way to help ensure that there is a realistic cost-benefit evaluation done in advance of a loan happening? Is it the city's responsibility, and ultimately it's between the lender and the private property owner, but as it is for every type of loan. But the city doesn't have city isn't part of that process now. If I go to the bank and say I want to borrow money, it's strictly, the city doesn't endorse it, it doesn't encourage it, it doesn't put a list of banks together or anything else. It strictly benefits from, actually the lender has the ability to put,
They can put a mortgage lien.
mortgage lien, yeah, correct.
Like looking at slide 9 on the key elements, like it says energy cost savings must exceed cost of improvements. So it looks like they do a check for cost
Right.
benefit, but as we've seen in some energy cost estimates that we've gotten, they can be highly over optimistic
Right.
in their assumptions, and so you can make anything say that it's cost benefit
Right.
Yeah.
if you try hard enough.
So maybe that's could be part of our recommendation, is a sentence or two recognizing that that we recommend an in-depth look at this specific part of the program, so that people don't get the wool pulled over their eyes in terms of what really goes into the costs and how those cost analyses are done.
And maybe we could start out with a recommendation that say the program sounds like it's along with what we're looking for of energy efficiency, renewable energy, etc. And that, maybe we should watch it, see how it rolls out across other towns in the local area, and circle back in a year and see what their experience is with the program. I mean, that's one option.
And that certainly would be, the conservative approach to take, probably would be fairly time consuming, because it would take probably more than a year to really see how it, but I don't know if it'll take as long to let mass development actually finish their process.
Yeah.
And really define what this program is about, so that we can learn more about it and say, it's great, they've done a great job. We now understand how the economics of projects are supposed to be valued, and we think mass development's done a great job.
It'd be interesting, just asking town of Northampton or West Springfield, say, how many of these PACE loans have you done since it rolled out 6 months ago? And if their answer is 0, then it might not even be worth our time to even bother, because there's not a market for it, maybe.
Well, I think that to some degree, we won't know the market until we allow there to be a market.
Yep. But these towns
Ferry,
have a market. They will have a market, so.
they will have a potential market. Ferry 1 is, I think, one of those kinds of properties where this may allow a slightly different financing that could be advantageous. And so why would we not let it be a part of that consideration and hold it back to, because again, I think what I would say from my perspective as an energy committee, and what you looked at in terms of our charter, does this support energy efficiency and renewable energies in our city. Yes, this clearly does that. I think you brought up a very good point about the questioning and making sure that people really look at the details of those energy saving analysis. That's from our own experience. Yeah, that's a place that we want to make sure people don't get, misinformation or misguided. So that's something that we could certainly put into our recommendation. The next layer of this, though, is finances, and none of us are bankers. None of us are going to, it's not our area of expertise, it's not our area of charter, and that's where I think that's really where the devil in the details of this program is in the financing. And I don't think we need to think of ourselves as approving or disproving the financing that goes behind this and supports this or not. That's why I've been, I think there's enough detail here in terms of my understanding of this program and my research on it, and I feel comfortable moving forward at this time, and I don't think that we need to wait to see how the loans work out or don't work out in other neighboring communities.
There are financial aspects, maybe not the bank financing piece of it, but what Stephen had mentioned, the key element, energy cost savings must exceed the improvements. Just better understanding how is that key element going to be met in the program that mass development is creating. That, I think, is something that's very much within our ability to understand.
Yeah.
And other than a general statement, we don't really know how that statement, that's probably one of the most important things and where there can be the biggest flaws in terms of how that is done.
Yeah, maybe, that's, how is PACE evaluating that? How are they evaluating the cost savings that a third-party developer will say, I can save X number of dollars for this property by putting in LEDs or whatever?
Right.
And then, is it the city that approves it? Is it mass development that approves it? And
Definitely isn't the city.
Yeah.
It would be,
mass
it would
development.
probably go to mass development. So.
So again, I'll say, conceptually, great idea. The devil in many things comes down to the details. So I'm personally not in a position where I can say, okay, I understand the details enough that I can say not only is it a great concept, but this is the specific concept that the city should go forward with.
I guess to that, is there any other kind? It's like,
Right, other choices? No, but just because it might be the only game
Sure,
in town doesn't mean it's,
yeah.
you have to sign up for it.
I guess the other piece, and I just want to point out, I have a very important school committee that starts right at 6 o'clock that I can't be a second late for, so we've got 20 minutes left. But I think one of the things that's fun is that this is our first real discussion
Yep, yep,
and debate,
yep,
so
right.
that's awesome. And so I think that's really valuable for us to have these. And so I think it's good that we're sort of taking on something and thinking that through. I think the other piece that comes to mind is that this is a moment where I forget who said it. You, Bob, you said it in your email back to me when I was talking about something we're talking later on about grants. And it's sort of like, do we want to be relevant in our meetings to the rest of the city? And do we want to be engaged or do our own thing outside of what a lot of the other city departments and committees are doing? And so my wonder is, the city council may move forward with this with or without a letter of recommendation from us. And just like they have with other grants that they're working off of. And do we want to be able to
have a seat at the table.
Or have enough of a conversation to put it forward that we want to be sitting at that table with them as they continue to go forward? Or are we going to hold back our letter of recommendation until we have a year of analysis, by which point, we may or may not have had a seat at the table and they may move forward, or they may now be coming to us and saying, okay, well, what's your analysis now? I don't know. I can't know what's going to happen a year from now.
I would say if, and I'm not suggesting that it is, but if it was the wrong thing for the city to do, I would much prefer holding back a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward just because we want to be able to stay involved, if it's not the right thing to do, isn't a very strong motivation for me to move forward with something. And I suspect it isn't, and I suspect as a result of the additional legislation in 2016 and the fact that mass development is now getting involved, that
And
this is
now-
going to be a better, more robust, more,
And I actually would have to assume they probably have some they're just not in this presentation because it was passed in August of 2016 and they're not rolling it out till August of 2019.
yeah,
So therefore, they've had 3 years to develop regulations and process and procedures. So I'm assuming those are there.
they may be.
And maybe that's, our recommendations, we like this program, we think the only question we have is in the details of the process and procedures and how to be rolled out. And we recommend that, the subcommittee goes into that, has more, talks to Pace or Mass Development, gets those details, and we'd be willing to offer, somebody to sit on that subcommittee and to work with them and,
If you look at what council subcommittees have on their plates, it's huge
as a-
amounts of it, they're all across, so
maybe at least if the subcommittee's
I
there.
think we could do the best value for the city to be able to distill this all down to something that we can then make
Yeah, I guess my
life
thought is.
easier for the subcommittee and not saying, here it is, figure it out.
Well, maybe we have the city council delegate us to do it, and then we use the city council's weight to contact Mass Development to have them come to our meeting.
Well, I can talk to Wendy and have her tell her.
Or we can do telephone conferences or whatever, they don't need to physically be
But
here. But yeah, I think that, in concept, we support it, we endorse it, we would recommend that it be further evaluated before the council subcommittee considers it in any detail, take any
Yes.
action on it or anything, that.
Are they looking to do action on this in the very near term? Do you know from your discussions with the mayor?
My discussions with mayor and with the city council, I mean, they're very interested in it.
Did they know it existed before you brought it forward to them? I suspect they didn't.
The mayor did.
Mayor did, okay, yeah.
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 One of the other city council members that I've talked to did not know about it, but
Right.
then once he had heard about it, once he
Right.
requested play, he did research on it and then was very interested in
Yeah.
helping it go forward.
So I guess I asked that because I'm not, haven't gotten the sense that this is something that the council has been moving forward with on their own, that we're bringing it to the council and getting them interested, which is a good thing. I think again, that's part of our role.
So maybe let's do this. Maybe it'd be best to have a call, maybe we can schedule a special meeting in between this and our next monthly meeting on the availability. And we still have to make a public meeting, obviously, with a call or WebEx. Well, I guess we can't do a WebEx, or maybe they probably have WebEx capabilities they could send to us, hopefully. And we sit down there and we come up with and get more details on, do you have these procedures in place? Do you have these regulations in place? How does it, get those details so we can make a recommendation and then make a recommendation in April, one way or the other, at our meeting, if we have a call, contingent on us having a call with Mass Development.
And I could maybe actually talk to Councilmember Peak
If he
about
wants
the
to,
attending kind of thing, or
Definitely.
anybody else who would want to attend that. Okay, so I can definitely reach back out to Mass Development and see about scheduling that, and seeing scheduling something in this time frame, and then get back. I'll get 3 times from her that she'd be available in the late afternoon or late evening time, and send it out to you guys to make sure that what you guys could commit to.
Okay.
Does that work?
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. Next item on the agenda was the update on the 2019 Green Community Grant applications.
Yep, so I sent
City
that around.
did it.
The city did it, and there's a couple different grants that they're going for. There's a straight up EV grant that they're looking at putting into EV stations. here at 50 Payson, and then under the Green Community Grant, they're looking at 2 EV stations over at Mill 180 area, and then some DPW furnace work and HVAC work. So the Green Communities Grant is about $69,000, almost $70,000, and did not have a chance to review that with Jeff at all, because it was DPW, you know, and you know, Bob, when you were working with DPW last time around there, and that some of that energy analysis stuff was questionable, but they didn't send it over in any kind of time frame that would allow us to be able to look at it before they were trying.
And it does
Grant
look
out.
like, and based on the email you forwarded, that they were working with Time Bond to pull those applications together. So I don't think they were doing it with blindly. I think they had some outside assistance
Yeah.
in doing that.
Yep. So hopefully that's all, you know, that we didn't get slightly misguided energy analysis, you know, and hopefully they're with Tiger Bonds.
At least it's not a
It's
grant
good.
from one of the old schools that's gonna get torn down.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yes,
Some foresight.
definitely.
Yes.
So those are, I think those are
and
overall.
an opportunity for us could be if they do get the EV grants, then we can publicize that saying, hey, Easthampton's getting new electric vehicle plug-in stations, they're gonna plan to be here and here, and the
Well, and
our outreach aspect of it.
Yeah, and I wonder too, what's the plan? I mean, I don't know the details of how, like, are we setting those up to be free stations, or for instance, or are we setting them up to be charge stations that have some sort of fee involved? I don't know. In my conversations with Jeff, he hasn't necessarily, the city planner hasn't necessarily clarified those kind of details around those.
Yeah.
And I think he's also working with Eversource to support Eversource money to come to this as well, because they're
Yeah,
going
for
to
the
do some
connection.
connection work, and there's grant money within Eversource to do that. So, but I've never heard of him bringing in some of the different charging companies to be a part of this. So I'm not sure what the actual cost side of it for the future for customers is.
But there's several programs, ChargePoint's the big one that's out there.
Yeah.
Air Environment has some.
But since we're doing it all and not ChargePoint, I don't know if we would bring in ChargePoint later on.
Even if we do it, we may use ChargePoint and stuff. It depends on what charging. The chargers themselves are also owned by the companies that perform the billing service on the back end. Because I know, for example, National Grid, they put up a lot of charging stations and they use ChargePoint. And even though it was free to charge, you had to have a ChargePoint RFID tag to unlock the charger.
Mm.
And then it was unlocked, so that way it kind of prevents anybody from unlocking it and
playing.
messing with it or playing with it.
Yeah.
But it also controls it, and it allows for in the future, say that they're adopted enough, you could change it to a billing structure and everything's already set up. People just have to set up. It was kind of like back when the tolls were free, but you still had to have an easy pass to go in and around, same idea. So maybe that may be a structure, and that's something where we could provide input to
Yep.
the city planner and stuff. And I guess it also comes down to what the city wants to do as far as revenue. I mean, if they want to charge revenue on it, or, because I know, for example, Northampton, I don't believe they charge specifically for the chargers themselves, but the spots where they're at charge their usual parking rates.
Yeah. Well, the city has. I mean, the city's got.
The garage has a couple, one's broken.
Well, no, they're actually fixed again.
They fixed it again?
So there's 2 in the garage. There's 2 on the city, just on the street parking, and then there's probably another 4 in the garage that are for city only charging. So
Yeah.
I think that's also part of the question is, is this
Public charging or
public
city.
versus city? Are we setting ourselves up as a city to start to move towards some potential EV vehicles and charging those vehicles here? I think those are some of the questions that don't know how much has planned. Are we just sort of putting them in and trying to move towards
Yeah.
making those decisions? I think.
I mean, I'd say the
But,
180 is definitely going to be for public, because you wouldn't have city vehicles going in.
No.
And Payson, next between Cottage Street and Union Street, as far as commercial districts, I would.
Yeah. So I think it's, but I don't know if my understanding is that there have not necessarily been earmarked one way or the other, and so I don't know how much Jeff has had those conversations to decide which is which at this point. But something that might be a place for us to, because we help with the Green Community grant, and the reporting, and vehicles is certainly a part of that reporting. Maybe that's a place that we can sort of continue to have a conversation with Jeff, and maybe see if he'll attend one of these meetings so that everyone's a part of that conversation or not. I don't know.
Do you know when we'll hear back from those grant applications? Typically?
I'm not sure. It's typically 6 to 8 weeks, but I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, so we probably know by our May meeting.
Yeah, we
Most
can know by our
likely.
May meeting.
Okay, so maybe it'd be good to have Jeff, if we get approved for him, have him come to the May meeting.
What are the grants called? It's a green.
Green community
Green
grants,
community?
we're designated as a green community.
Yeah.
And by filing the paperwork every year that Marion does for the reporting, we become eligible to access grant money as a green community. So that's part of the applications. And then the other one's a separate, came out of the Volkswagen.
MAEVIP.
Yeah, VIP, yeah, electric vehicle, something, something, they make cool acronyms on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's to encourage, I think part of it came from the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal money. That each state got that sued Volkswagen when they were doing the cheat scandal on their diesel engines. Everybody got some money out of that, a couple $1 billion across the country, I believe.
Yeah.
So they're using that to encourage installation of electric vehicle charging stations and stuff like that. Okay, so that sounds good for that.
Okay. I'll reach out to Jeff.
Okay.
Just touch base with him on that.
Great. The next item agenda is, the last one is an update on the pre-K through 8 school PV sizing. So you already know the sizing is about 130 kW, right?
Yeah.
That's the max size. And with the estimates that I had, and you said that the estimate for the usage is 1.1 million
Yeah.
kWh. So using that, I think having as big as possible is going to be fine. Because do you know what the kWh usage of our previous schools are combined?
I used to at one time.
Okay. I'm sure it's not 1.1 million,
No.
and it's probably not 1.1 million minus the PV system.
Yeah. Okay.
So
there's a
my
net
only concern
increase.
was that we'd be a net decrease after you put in the PV system, but it looks like there's no way that'll happen.
There's a net increase for electricity. I think there's a decrease, a net decrease in our gas,
Which is fine.
which is good. And then definitely we are not using.
So they didn't have any issues with the gas peak demand issue with the moratorium and stuff? Because I remember that was the meeting I went to, there was some concern from
Yeah.
Columbia on that, so that's good. So, because that would have led to changing some energy system, building systems to electric if they had to, but.
Right.
Okay. Any other new business or? So it sounds like for April, so first upcoming, we'll try to schedule a conference with Mass Development before our April meeting, and then we can schedule that with, I guess we gotta do it at least 2 weeks out so we can post the agenda and all that stuff in time, right?
It doesn't have to be 2 weeks out, but
Well, so then we have to, with her, so we can go back and forth, find a date that works for us, and then go within a week to
yeah.
the city.
Yeah. I'll email her tomorrow.
Okay.
Alright, and then I'll reach out to Jeff and just let him know that we'd be interested in his attending our May meeting, just to sort of talk a little bit more, get a little bit more understanding about how the EV stations fit into the plan for the city.
Okay, so then, according to my calendar, our next advisory committee is the 23rd of April. Does that still work for everybody?
That should still work.
Actually, no. I'm sorry. I have some personal. I have something that starts at 6 o'clock in Northampton.
Okay.
So either we could do.
Do you want to move it up to 4:30 to 5:30? Can you do
Could
that?
do that, should be able to.
I should be able to do that too. So it's 4:30 to 5:30 work?
Yep.
So we'll alter the April meeting to April 23rd from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So as I said, the next week I wasn't going to be good because that was both my birthday and I'm on a business trip. But I get to celebrate my birthday on a business trip.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, any other business or new or other business? Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
Mm-hmm. Seconded.
All right, we adjourned.